Hi, I'm the Rick and Rick Turns, and today I'm going to be taking one of my tenoning cutters made from an open end wrench, and I'm going to be mounting it in a handle. It makes it a lot easier to use, safer to use as well. Handles for tools are very easy to turn. If you've ever done one, you already know that. You won't need much. Piece of wood here, something to use for a ferrule. I've got a piece of brass, but I'll probably be using copper today. A drill to put a hole down in here, and of course some kind of glue, most likely epoxy. All right, let's get started. I've got 3 more wrenches that I want to make handles for. This is 5/8, this is 1/4, this is 5/16. Now that would give me a total of 5 tenoning cutters, which is definitely plenty of tenoning cutters. I probably don't need that many, but I definitely need this one. This is a 7/8 inch cutter, and I use it to cut for the G3 chuck with 25mm jaws on it, which will open to about a 1 1/8, but this was the largest size wrench that I had. So I've got a 7/8 inch tenon to fit in here. This is my Nova Midi chuck with 25mm jaws. As you can see, it doesn't open quite as wide as these do. So I've got about 3/4 of an inch there. And what I've got right here is a 5/8 inch cutter. So this will get mounted on a handle for this chuck. This one matches this chuck. And then the 1/8 and the 5/16 inch tools are what I use to cut tenons on small chunks of wood that I'm going to mount on top of another piece of wood. When I make a ream post, as I have a video for, the top piece, or the top little teardrop shape, gets a tenon and is mounted into a hole on the base piece. All right, I'm ready to cut my tenoning wrench, tenoning cutter, shorter for the handle, of course. Now, I could do this with a hacksaw, of course, but instead what I'm going to use is an angle grinder, 4.5 inch angle grinder with a cutting blade on it. You see the blade is extremely thin, about 1/16 of an inch there, and it cuts through most metals very well. If you've got an angle grinder, you probably know how handy it can be when you're working on metal. So all I'm going to do right now is make a cut right down here to shorten or to get rid of this end of the wrench, and then this shaft will be glued into the tool handle. All right, let's see. Still cool enough to hold by this end. So I'm going to take this. I'll be grinding that down some to go into the tool handle. All right, I'm here at the grinder. This is the wrench I just cut the end off on. Got kind of a ragged surface. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to narrow this across the width just a little bit, and I'm going to grind kind of a sharp edge on here to help it cut into the wood when I drive it into the handle. That gets the burr off. All right, now I've got a little bit of an edge right there. And I'm just going to narrow it a little bit here, make it easier to go into the hole. All right, there's my taper. It's maybe 1 inch long. I don't put these real deep into the tool handle, but putting them in there with epoxy that far seems to make it pretty sturdy, and I haven't had any problems with it. All right, let's start on the handle now. All right, this is what we're going for, something like this. Now I'm going to turn this handle for this 1/4 inch tenoning cutter right here. which I haven't even ground down with a cutting edge yet. So it doesn't need to be real long. It doesn't need to be real thick. This is generally the thickness that I like my handles because it feels good in my hand. That's about 1 3/4 at the maximum thickness, maybe a little bit less than that. So the first thing I'm going to do is round this down. Then I'm going to cut a tenon on this end to receive the ferrule. And of course the ferrule is there just for strength, to keep that wood from ever splitting if you get a catch or anything like that. For a ferrule, I think I'm going to cut a piece off of this. This is a piece of brass tubing. It's got a outside diameter of 1 inch and an inside diameter of about 0.94 inches. Now for this small a tool, that'll still give me plenty of room to drill a hole in there and mount the tool. If you don't have brass rod around, which generally isn't all that cheap, you can get a piece of copper plumbing pipe like this and cut it down to maybe 1/2, 3/4 of an inch. That'll make a very good ferrule. Or you can buy a fitting like this, which is already short, and it would make a very good ferrule as well. But I'm going to use the brass, because it looks nicer. I've got a tube cutter right here for plumbing work. And so I'm going to run this down until the blade just touches the tube there, right there. And cut off about 3/4 of an inch or so. So I just tighten this up a little bit. And there it is. Okay, that's good enough for the moment. Got a knot here, and so I want to make this the base. I want to make this piece the top. So I'm going to reverse its direction in the chuck. So I get this over here where it's easier to work with for cutting that tenon. All right, that looks good. Here's the ferrule piece that I just cut. I'm going to put it right there. This is the length. Just going to mark this right here. Doesn't matter if it's a little too long. That is, if this is a little too long. If this is a little too long, it's kind of inconvenient. It doesn't really matter, but it'll work okay. If the wood piece is a little too long, well, you can always grind it away some on the belt sander. So I'm going to set this pair of calipers to the inside diameter here, just to get me close. Actually, I'm going to set it a little bit too large. Right about there. So I get down to there and I'm just a little bit too large. Then I'll start finessing it a little bit. All right. All right, the end is just a trifle too large. Coming back, it's a little bit more larger. I'm going to taper this back a little bit. And now for the first of many fittings, I'm afraid. So, back this out and try it out. As expected, that's too large. And thin it down a little bit more. Still too big. All right, that is good. Yeah, it's just about what I want. So, before I do anything else, I'm going to glue this on. And slip this in place. Push it down. I'm going to use the rest of the tube and put it on there to push it down, I hope. There we have it. That's good right there. Okay, I'm at the drill press to drill the hole right in the top. Now this little piece, it's pretty thin. So the maximum thickness right there is 1/8 of an inch. And the distance, full distance right there is a little over 1/4 of an inch. A little under 1/4 of an inch down at the base. So I'm going to drill a couple of 1/8 inch holes and then just widen it out by moving the drill bit back and forth until I get to that width and a place that it'll easily fit into. I've got a 1/8 inch bit in here. I'm going to drill the center hole and then I'll widen it to either side just by drilling another hole and pushing it back and forth. Not the greatest way to do it, but then who's got a chisel that small? All right, I'm ready to drill. Looking pretty good. A little bit more and then I'll rely on being able to pound it in for the rest. Yeah, I think it's good enough. Once I drive it down in there, it's going to be in pretty solid. And I'll have epoxy up here as well. All right, now we can finish it up on the lathe. Going to remount this between centers. Now I've got a little bit of an odd shaped hole there, not the best thing for that type of center. So I'm going to replace that with a sort of a cup center. This used to be a regular center until I managed to break off the tip somehow. But it works fairly well as a cup center now, and it'll work in this case. Just a little harder to center it. All right, I'm going to turn the narrowest part right in here. A little bit of a slope up there, and a bulb right here, very much like this. Larger here, slope in here. And I'll bring this tip right down to the brass. Then I'll turn the brass a little bit. And now I'm going to switch to a skew as it gives such a nice surface. I think that's good. I am going to switch to sanding now. And I don't think it's necessary to film that because it is boring. Back in a moment. That's the last of the sanding. As this is a tool handle, I don't want it to get too slick. So it's almost done. I just need to part it off. All right, I got to knock that off. Then I'm going to mount the screwdriver blade. And when I'm got that done, then 1 coat of boiled linseed oil and let that dry and it'll be good to go. All right, and I'm going to put a little on the shaft of the screw, the shaft of the, well, I was going to call it a wrench, but it's really a tenoning tool. A wrench no more. I'm going to keep that wet for a little while, not long, then let it dry. Last thing to do, I haven't sharpened the tines on the tenoning tool yet, so I guess it's still a wrench at this point. A wrench with a really nice handle. So the handle's done. All I need to do now is grind these tips sharp. This is my 1/4 inch. All right, here we have it. I've got another tenoning tool to use. 1/4 inch size. I probably won't need it until next Christmas when I make ornaments.